So hello, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name's Kimber Sider, and I am the artistic director of the Guelph Film Festival. So welcome and thank you for joining us to this kickoff event for the 2020 Guelph Film Festival, our first online experience. So thanks for joining us for this Zoom live event, The Dilemma of Desire, Cliteracy, and Female Empowerment. So we'd like to start by with a land acknowledgement, and by acknowledging that the Guelph Film Festival takes place on the ancestral homelands of the Anishinaabe peoples, specifically the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We stand on Treaty 3, or Between the Lakes Perches territory. This year's online festival ranges across Ontario, which includes at least 46 recognized treaties. If you'd like to learn more about the treaties and the land that you're on, you can go to our website and our land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements, of course, though, are nowhere near enough. They're important, but they're only a first step to the road to awareness, education, truth, and reconciliation. So at the Guelph Film Festival, one of our actions on this road is that we incorporate Indigenous voices, stories, and knowledge into our programming by showcasing documentaries that have Indigenous peoples in key creative roles and control over their own storytelling or native sovereignty, following the guidelines of the Indigenous Screen Office. So please, along those lines, check out the collection of Indigenous-made shorts that we have as part of the online festival. So how things will sort of work tonight is that the first chunk of the evening will be a conversation moderated by our local moderator, Wilma, with director Maria Finitzo and artist and film subject, Sophia Wallace. And then throughout the discussion, all of you lovely humans that have joined us can send in questions through the chat function, and I will be collecting those questions that we will direct towards our panel at the end. So in order to send in a question that you have for our speakers, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you will see a chat function. If you can't see it right now, just hover your mouse over the screen and it'll come up. When you click on that, you'll see the messages that I've sent out so far, so that'll get you situated. And then if you'd like to send a message in, you'll see a box at the bottom of the screen that says "to." Right now, it probably says everyone, but so we're not getting distracted during the Q&A or during the discussion that Wilma's moderating. If you switch the to question moderator, which is me, then we won't be getting distracted with other people's questions coming up throughout. And so you can send those questions in at any time. So just type it in and hit enter, and those questions will come to me and I will collect those. And then towards the end of the discussion, we will bring those questions up for our lovely panel. And if any questions arise in any other way, feel free to shoot those to me as well throughout. And I will address those as we go, and Wilma and our panel will do all of the amazing speaking. So that is how the evening is working. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I will pass it off to Wilma to get to the interesting bits.
All right, good evening. Thanks everyone for coming out. This is our first talk on the first night of the Guelph Film Festival 2020, so let's acknowledge and appreciate that. I'm super excited to be here tonight with the director Maria Finitzo and artist Sophia Wallace. So I will introduce you two and then we'll get started. Maria is a two-time Peabody Award-winning social issues documentary filmmaker, perfect for the Guelph Film Festival. She's been producing and directing documentary films for more than 25 years. Dilemma of Desire is her most recent project, and Maria is joining us from Chicago. Sophia Wallace is a mixed media artist, best known for her viral project called Cliteracy. Her TED Talk, A Case for Cliteracy, has been viewed 269,000 times. Almost enough, not quite. While her multi-collaboration with the Huffington Post, The Overdue Undertold Story of the Clitoris, received 3.5 million views and has been translated into 3 different languages. Sophia is joining us tonight from Brooklyn. And so my first question, welcome to both of you. How did you meet?
Well, I learned about Sophia when I was starting to do research about a film about female sexual desire. And I came across her work on the internet and fell in love with it. And then a couple of years later in 2013, I reached out to her and I said, I'm making this film and I would really love it if you would be a part of it. And I think in 2013, I was able to go to New York, and that's the first time we met.
Ah. And so I assume after that is when the project came, you started talking about this project and this film.
Well, one of the things I said to Sophia after we met is that I would come back, she would hear from me again, but it was going to take me a long time because I had to raise money. And it did. And we got back in touch with each other, and I didn't start filming with Sophia until 2016, actually August of 2016.
Okay. So you had a kind of a long time to get to know each other before you started filming. Okay. Sophia, what did you think about your work translating into a film like this?
I think for any artist, I mean, it's such an honor to be in a position where your story gets told, as opposed to, you know, you're using your work to try to tell other stories or put ideas out into the world. So I thought to be able to have someone as talented and as experienced as Maria and with so much integrity wanting to tell my story, I knew it was a huge gift. I was very excited for that. And I think, you know, I really appreciated the sensitivity that Maria had with which she approached the work. I've had many opportunities to be in lots of projects and films, and a lot of them I say no because people are creating work in a way that actually harms the content, harms the subject matter, and isn't helping. It actually makes things a lot worse. So, you know, like everything that's made isn't necessarily making things better. I mean, if you look at like a lot of the pornography that exists in the world, there's some really, you know, ethically produced porn that's really wonderful. And then there's a lot of porn that I would argue is giving really harmful information about like what sex is, what pleasure is, how bodies work, what bodies should look like. So I knew that this chance was really special, and also that, you know, my story would be in safe hands and I could just kind of like open up and let Maria into my life.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Maria, you mentioned that the first step was to get funding. Can you tell us how you did that? And I guess this I should have asked first is maybe what made you want to tell this story?
Well, most of my work as a social issue documentary filmmaker has dealt with the lives of girls and women and the challenges they face in their life and having agency over their lives in whatever way makes sense to them. And so after I finished my last film, I was looking around for another subject, and I have a daughter who I think at that point was in college. And one of the things that I had noticed about her life through high school and college was that the landscape that she moved around in as a young woman, right, the sexual landscape, was a difficult landscape to be in because it was more dangerous than the one that I grew up in. And it was a landscape that had a lot of minds in it. So we tell our daughters and young people that they can behave however they want sexually, right? The sexual revolution happened and you can go out and do whatever you want. But that is in fact not exactly true. Because when they do, it's a dangerous world, and then a lot of times they're shamed and they're shamed for it, right? Mm-hmm. So I was very interested in finding out what were the things that got in the way of women having agency over their desire. And I read a book called The Science of Female Sexual Desire by a man named Daniel Bergner. And he went around the country and in Canada and interviewed scientists who were studying female pleasure and female desire. And the whole upshot of the book was, at the end of the book, the conclusions were from all these scientists, women have as robust a sex drive as men. They're simply told lies about it to reinforce patriarchal structures. And as a filmmaker, that was what was interesting to me. I didn't want to make a film about science. I wanted to make a film about the patriarchal structures that are still in place and how they continue to impact on the lives of all of us, men and women.
Mm-hmm. No kidding. So you found a number of other people to showcase in your film. How did you find them? How did you connect with them?
Well, Lisa Diamond is actually in Daniel Berger's book. So Lisa and Sophia were the two people I, began with. And when I was trying to imagine how I would turn a topic like this into a film, right, make it cinematic, you have to have people in the film who are doing extraordinary work around this topic. And so, of course, Sophia was really the most important person for me to have in this film because her work was so fresh and challenging and provocative and smart and all of the things that I needed. And when Sophia and I started working together, she had met a woman named Stacy Dutton, and Sophia introduced me to Stacy. And then we started filming with Lisa Diamond, Stacy, and Sophia. And then about 2 years into filming, I think, Sophia recommended another woman, T. Chang, and I had also been recommended to T from a couple of other people. And when I got on the phone with T, I was really intrigued with the idea of the perspective of an industrial designer. So someone who creates products for us to use as human beings. And one of the things T said to me was, the products we have in our lives, if they're beautifully designed, they make us feel good about ourselves, right? We all love our iPhones and we love our computers, whatever it is. If it's a beautifully designed product, we feel great. But vibrators and, products that women are supposed to use for their pleasure, for the most part, look ridiculous. And so T was saying she wanted to change that and create elegant products so that women would feel better about using them and about their own pleasure. And I thought that was a great perspective to bring into the film.
I love her vibrator necklace. You're so right. She's so right. And that's such a wonderful part of the film. Sophia, can you talk about how you got started working on sharing the clit with the world and its many
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't find out the true anatomy of the clitoris till I was 34 years old. So I would say to anyone who learns the true anatomy for the first time in seeing this film or has just discovered it, please don't feel bad. It's almost impossible in our current cultural context to know this true anatomy. I found out the true anatomy. I was shocked. I was horrified. I couldn't believe that I didn't know about my own body. And simultaneously, I was, hearing stories since I was really small of girls and women having really bad sexual experiences, being sexually shamed, not having orgasms. And eventually, as I came out, when I was 16 and then I was in queer relationships, it was really obvious to me that I was having a very different sexual experience than my straight friends were. And it was in no way because, people identified female at birth weren't sexual or our bodies didn't work. It was all about the way that our bodies were being treated by who we slept with. And I thought, as a visual artist, I thought just like, wow, there's so much harm that's done by all of these images of sex and sexuality that just never show the clitoris as being part of what sex is. If anything, maybe it could be like a part of foreplay. It's treated as sort of this this kind of warm up, this kind of, laborious, annoying thing that you have to do and then you stop doing, which is like the most illogical thing. Like, why would you ever stop touching the clitoris? You would never just like start touching a penis and then ignore it and expect it to like have a good time. And why would you do the same? So I just, it all kind of hit me over the head. And, and also I found out that my grandmother at the end of her life confessed to one of her children that she didn't think she'd ever had an orgasm. And she was really sad about it. And, this is a person that, she is like the reason my whole family exists. She was such a warm, gregarious, athletic, fun-loving person. I was just like, there's no way that she wasn't capable of having orgasms. I blame the society for never thinking that her orgasms mattered. And, you know, my grandfather for not prioritizing her pleasure. You know, she gave birth to 5 children, 4 of whom survived. And that is just an incredible sacrifice. And the fact that, like, it was okay for her to give and give and give and suffer and have pain, but her to have pleasure wasn't a priority, that just really was heartbreaking. And that it was a silence of her whole life. And I thought, this is a silence of so many people. So I just got to the point where I was like, I have to make work about this. I have to tell the truth about this. And maybe I'm best situated to do this because I'm already, you know, as a lesbian, I'm already considered this sort of sexual outcast, this deviant person, according to the religion I was raised in and according to a lot of people. So I have nothing to lose in a way by telling the truth. And that's kind of the starting place, you know, and then from there, I used my background as someone trained in, you know, my undergraduate degree was in political science, and I studied a lot of political theory. I'm really interested in the law. And I started thinking about using the law and using natural law to protect and defend the clitoris and saying, okay, this is a part of the body that's being treated like a cancer. It's being denied and negated in our knowledge production. It's being stigmatized. Okay, I need a law that can protect this organ. Anyone who has it can be safe, and their body can't be attacked by a government, by a religion, by, you know, any kind of cultural entity. And that's why I wrote the 100 Natural Laws of Cliteracy. That was the starting point.
I love the 100 Natural Laws. Did they all come from you, or did you consult with others to create them?
Yeah, it was all my work and research, but some of them are, you know, like I have a quote from Anne Frank, for example, who asked her mother about her clitoris, and her mom was like, I don't know what it is. You know, she said, what is this little nub that's sensitive? And her mom said, I don't know. So her mom just completely gaslit her about her own clitoris. And I have some other quotes. A lot of things are things that I wrote, things that I remixed from, like, you know, music, or activist chants, or they're pieces of information that I, you know, wrote in a way that I thought was powerful. And then things like, you know, that are sort of wordplay, like democracy without cliteracy, fallacy, or the whole is not the whole, you know, or like, and then like sort of like fun things like clitoris, say my name, you know, solid gold clit. I mean, all, you know, some of it was very playful and very joyful. And then some of it was very, kind of speaking hard truths. You know, as Maria said, provocative. I mean, it's hard for me to have a good assessment of like what's provocative or not, because I have to do this work, I have to tap into my outrage about the denial of pleasure for so many girls and women and people identified female at birth. I have to say, like, no, it's unacceptable. It's not shameful. There's nothing to, you know, it's a shame. Anyone should be ashamed that they're taking pleasure in someone's body and they're not caring about the other person's pleasure. Like, that's what should be shamed. Sexual incompetence should be shamed. Ignorance should be shamed, but like not half of the world's body. By the way, half of the world that like reproduces society. Like,
right.
You're welcome, you know, like, so.
What has been for both of you, what has been the reaction to your work on the clitoris? So Maria, for you, it's this film. What's the critical response been? And Sophia, over time, how have you noticed the world responds to what you're putting out there?
Well, the reaction to the film from audiences has been overwhelmingly positive and enthusiastic, and they're sort of in love with the film. And people range in age from 15 to 80. After the film premiered, I got an email from a man who said, I'm 80 years old. I've been married to the same woman for 50 years. I thought I knew everything about women. I watched your film. I realized I don't. Thank you. I love your new kind of feminism. And so it goes all the way from 80-year-old guy down to girls and women and femme identifying and everyone reaching out and saying, we love, love, love this film. What has been harder for me is that the response, certainly you asked about funding earlier, and the mainstream funders in the film community in the US have, across the board, turned me down repeatedly, like so many times I've lost count. And the way I funded this film was, interestingly enough, through a foundation owned by a man, and I had an investor who was a man. And so it was sad to me that as a woman, cisgendered woman, I could not engage other women in supporting this film. And I think that's because in those kind of silos or those kinds of institutions, right, whether they're broadcast institutions or funding institutions, a lot of times the people who make decisions are men. And so the women I would pitch to, or whether it was to be a broadcaster or for funding, were nervous about pitching the film to their bosses. And so that hasn't happened yet. But I think that will change in 2021, and we have some plans, and the film has been a huge hit in festivals, and I'm going to keep it in festivals. And then we're going to really try and build what I think has to happen, which is this film has to initiate a movement, right? I don't want us to go, have this film happen and then everybody to go back to forgetting about the clitoris and women's equality and bodies, the right for all bodies to have pleasure. That's one of Sophia's laws. I really wanted to initiate a movement that can't be stopped. So that's my plan for 2021.
Nice, good one. Sophia, how about you? How has the world received your work?
I think starting this project, I knew that I was doing something right, because immediately when people would see any part of it, even like one of the first things I created was this Cliteracy eye chart. So it was just like all the different size letters that just said Cliteracy. And people would be like, what is that? What are you doing? Can I have one of those? They really wanted to know. And I think that's because we never see the word clit or clitoris in public space in text. We don't hear it in speech. We don't have any kind of public discourse that acknowledges this part of our body and this part of our pleasure. Meanwhile, the phallus is represented everywhere in the most, pedestrian ways, like in little scribbles on, elementary school desks, to like a million jokes, a million metaphors, tropes in film posters. I mean, it's just everywhere. And so this part of our body that has 8,000 nerves on the outside, engages the inside, is an erectile organ, like doubles and triples in size when it's engaged. We feel so much there, and yet it's invisible. It's like this very this incredible looming invisible elephant in the room. And so to finally be like, oh yeah, I exist, I see myself, it's really powerful. And so I think people were just like, whoa. And so every time I would show it, people would photograph it, people would talk about it, people would come back to it, people would be like bringing friends, staying there, it would go viral online, wherever it was. And I knew that I was on the right path. In the scheme of things, I think people have been so much more supportive than I maybe expected. When I first started doing the work, I would have just these waves of like vulnerability hangovers where I'd be like, oh my God, like I can never, work in corporate America if I ever wanted to, get day jobs again. Like, this is it. Like, I've kind of like crossed over and I'm not one of those bad women now, and I just would feel shame because I'm talking about these things you're not supposed to talk about. But I realize it's like so important, and to have the response of people coming and telling me that like this changed their life. They thought they were crazy. They thought there was something wrong with them. That's happened to me so many times. Or, men telling me like, I am now able to like have really great sex with my partner and it's changed everything. And we've been together for years, and thank you. Cause I like had no idea. We couldn't talk about these things, and now we can. And like, that's so wonderful. It's on the one hand, like the ill cliteracy is so depressing, but then like you can't, like, once you know about cliteracy, you can't unknow about it. And then knowledge is power, and your whole life can open up. And so it's like something that is so positive in terms of changing the world, you know. And I do think that like many heterosexual men who maybe aren't the best at pleasing their partners, like would love to, you know, would love to be better, want to be better, but don't know how. Their partners don't feel permission to speak openly about these things. And so giving people that permission, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of permission, a little bit of like space to recognize that like, this is healthy, this is positive, this is good, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, your sexual pleasure is connected to your intellectual pursuits, your joy, your singing, your dancing, your creativity, you're cooking something delicious. It's like that extra little flavor that makes something where you're like, wow, they cooked that with love, or they threw it together and they handed it to me. I mean, that's part of who we are as human beings. It shouldn't be separated into this like otherized, shameful part of our bodies, or healthy and virile if it's a man, and like embarrassing and horrible if you're born female. So yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten some haters. I've gotten my, you know, a few death threats here and there, but overall, I think overwhelmingly, I've been really grateful for the positive response.
I think I'd like to add, because what's really powerful about Sophia's work, one of the many things is she's given all of us language to talk about these things in a way that we never had before, that can either be playful and fun, or can really get at the heart of what she's talking about: democracy without cliteracy, fallacy. I don't think there's a single person in the United States that doesn't understand that right now. And that's really speaks to her strength as an artist, because she did it. I met her in 2013. She had already done that work. It's 2020, and the world is kind of catching up to Sophia right now, right? The work has legs. It doesn't feel like it's old and, oh, we already know that. This is something that's constantly evolving, and she's reaching more and more people every day. And I think that's an extraordinary thing for an artist to do, is to create work in one time and place and have it continue to stay relevant for years, and even build in relevance. So,
yeah, I would agree. It's very accessible, but also very profound, right? And I love that there's a fun element. It's a joyful thing. It's and that is of course contrary to the way the world has perceived, or not perceived, but ignored the clitoris over many thousands of years. There's a beautiful moment in the film when the subject, Sunny, talks about how agency in your sex life can be a sort of a wedge, like the thin edge of a wedge into agency that is also political or social. And so the freedom that comes from really embracing your capacity for pleasure can be incredibly empowering. And I think that's kind of like the thesis of the film, if I can say that. And so it made me curious about why, this question is going to sound dumb after that. Sunny said it really well, right? That all of these forms of agency are interwoven. Who benefits from women not fully engaging in the experience of pleasure?
Well, so it's not so much women not engaging in the experience of pleasure, but it's rather the question is, who benefits from disconnecting women from a major source of their power? So imagine our concept of powerful men if they walked around having no idea they had penises or where their pleasure came from. I mean, that's absurd. Okay?
You're right.
It's absurd. And yet that's what we want women, that's how we want women to walk around, right? We want them to be sexual so we can objectify them. We really want them to be good in bed, but we don't want them to be too good, okay? And so what that does is it disconnects all of those people, everybody who's not a cisgendered white guy, it disconnects them from a part of their humanity, which is a way into their personal and political power. And to me, that's the most important part about the film and Sophia's work is, yes, we should all know our bodies and understand our bodies and own the knowledge of our bodies. But when you don't, it's Sunny said it, your voice isn't heard in so many other ways, right? So you don't speak up in the bedroom, you don't speak up in the boardroom, you don't speak up in the classroom, your voice isn't heard in the church or synagogue or wherever you worship. Your voice isn't heard in civil society. And that to me is the way it ripples out when your lives begin with the lie of omission, right? Which we're not going to tell you about this part on your body because we really don't want you to know. Because powerful women frighten people. We shouldn't, but we do.
Yeah, that is what it comes down to.
Yeah, there's a really wonderful quote by Audre Lorde, who's such a, important ancestor in the film and just visionary that, I mean, her work is just more and more profound over time. But she talks about once you know the power of the erotic, you can't be fooled anymore. And once you know what a real orgasm is, you're not going to settle for some bootleg, half-assed, crappy.
Performative.
Yeah. Not. You're going to be like, that was bad. I know what good is. I'm never going to do that again. I mean, hopefully that's what we should all be encouraging young women, young girls. If someone isn't good in bed, you never have sex with them again. Are you kidding me? No way. Not worth it. What are you getting out of it? You have a right to get orgasms out of it. You have a right to get pleasure out of it at the minimum, because we know you're going to get the risk of STDs, STIs. You're going to get all the shame potentially. You're going to get, anything that goes wrong. If there's an unintended pregnancy, guess who's going to be blamed? Guess who's going to have to be the one to has no option but to deal with it. And then you're going to remember your whole life. I mean, there's no easy way for girls, straight girls, really. I mean, the reality is that no one wants to talk about is like, no one is having less orgasms than straight women. Nobody. And that is, it's not because there's something wrong with women's bodies. It's because of who they're sleeping with and how those people are attending to their bodies. And so that can change though. That can change. That's a positive thing. But I think, Audre was really right. I mean, she just said like, once you connect to that kind of pleasure and that power that's inside of you, you become fearless. You don't accept anything less after that.
Mm-hmm. And it is a standard for, nobody has ever questioned, is a man experiencing pleasure in this sexual encounter? Like
It's all about his pleasure.
Yeah. That's it. That's the assumption. So that's not even a question because the whole thing would not exist without his pleasure. I'm wondering about, I feel that, in the world, we are getting better at seeing gender as something that is fluid, that is not binary. And I wonder if you have any comment on how, in my mind, I feel that the understanding of gender as a spectrum can only lead to a more accepting understanding of an individual's pleasure and desire, right? Do you have any comment, or did you encounter anything in your work that represents that or shows that? I know, Sophia, you have lots of queer, in your community and in those you represent, you've got lots of queer folks to draw from.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I've seen in the course of my life, I was born in 1978, I'm 42 years old now. I've seen so much exciting evolution in terms of, queer discourses, language, how people can express themselves and explore their identities that completely wasn't available when I was coming out, or even, 10 years, my 20s, like we just didn't have access to certain ideas that now exist. And I just love the creativity and the possibilities that are being opened up by this thoughtfulness. I think that, when I first started my project, I didn't really know how to talk about clits without always gendering them. And I realized over the course of years working on this that like clits and penises don't have to be gendered at all. They're just organs. It's actually really wonderful to talk about them outside of gender. And at the same time, you know, most people that are that have a clit are identified as female. So it's something that it's really about being identified female at birth and how one is socialized and treated by the world and how the clit is constructed, your sexuality, your right to your body. Are you allowed to know about it? Are you allowed to touch it? Who does it belong to? Does it belong to your parents until the right man puts a ring on your finger, or they approve of something, or your church approve, you know, all of these kind of rules that from a very young age, people that are identified as female at birth are controlled aggressively, you know, close your legs. I mean, how many times have we been told as little girls, close your legs, don't sit like that, down there, lady parts, all this euphemistic language, which, I mean, you just really feel bad. You feel ashamed. I mean, I remember like the first time I went to a gynecology appointment and I had this awesome feminist nurse practitioner who tried to like hand me a mirror to be like, okay, like, let's, you know, like, I'm gonna show you what I'm doing and talk to you about it. And I was like mortified beyond mortified. I was just like, oh my God, like, this is so embarrassing. I can't look. I'd never done that before. I'd never just looked, and I was so overwhelmed. And I think that's a really common experience that, I mean, Maria has had this experience too, with just like, people don't even want to say the word clitoris, let alone look at their vulva. You know what I mean? It's like, it's deep. And so we are taught to hate ourselves, you know, and that is so, that like, that's the work that we have to do, is like really to just decolonize our bodies from these ideas that really taught us to hate ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. I'm going to ask one more question. I think, where are we at? We're at 40 minutes, okay. And then we'll see if there are any out there in the chat. So for both of you, my question is, what are you working on next? Or what's your project that you are currently engaging in?
Well, Sophia and I made another film.
Yay!
It's a short film called Until She Is Free, and hopefully it will be in festivals. And it draws upon the themes of Dilemma of Desire, but it takes them a little further. It's a really, I'll say it, it's a lovely film. It's about Sophia's the only person Sophia's the main focus of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a deeply personal film for her. And in the film, we sort of imagine a future for our children, and what we want that future to be like. And so that's, Sophia can talk about it if she wants, but we've gotten, people really love it. And it's sort of similar to Dilemma of Desire, but very different in other ways. So that's right now what I'm working on, is getting that film out into the world in a way it deserves, and also the Dilemma of Desire continue to be out in the world.
Yes, yeah, it's pretty new.
For me, I can't really top what Maria said, so I just leave that there. But I just working on some new sculptures and some new jewelry, and just keeping going, new ideas all the time. So just following them. I mean, it's like, it's one of those exciting / scary things about being an artist, is like, you don't know half the time what your next thing is, and you don't have a choice about it. You just kind of get it, and then you're like, okay, I guess I have to work for you. Like, you're kind of like Cliteracy was not something I necessarily decided I was going to do, but I literally had no choice, but I had to do it. So that's kind of how my work is. I feel like I'm working for it. So yeah, just kind of onward with this crazy path, you know, and in these crazy times, and in our crazy countries, and just trying to keep the fascists at bay, move things forward, not let the backlashes happen to all of our good work that's happened.
Yes.
So
Oh, it looks like there are some questions. So Kimber, do you want to?
Yeah, so our first question's from Jen, and this is for Maria and then probably for both. Maria, what are your hopes for this film, and where do we start with our daughters and sons?
So I'll talk about the daughters and sons. So when I met Sophia and she showed me what the clitoris looked like, the full internal size of the organ, I was shocked, and I was way older than she was when she found out. And then I was really sad because I realized I had never had a conversation with my daughter about this. And I'm a pretty with it mom. So once I started making this film, I started talking to both my daughter and my son about this. And I think my son was in high school when I started blabbing about the clitoris. And I never stopped. And at one point he said to me, Mom, what is the big deal? I think he was in college. And I said, tell me a moment past the age of 2 when you didn't know you had a penis, where it was and what it was for. Name one moment. He's like, you're right. And now he's like this wonderfully, clitorate man, and I'm happy about that. And we talk about it, and he understands the importance of it and its connection to equality, and so does my daughter. So that's on a personal level. I mean, I think, having finished the film, their mother can stop talking about the clitoris, but I talked about it a lot. What I hope for this film, and I usually have big goals, and that's maybe a strength and a weakness, is I'm looking for a cultural sea change, right? I want girls and women and anybody that has a clitoris to be able to talk about their bodies and their pleasure without shame or embarrassment and fear of being jailed or criminal, like thrown in jail. The control of bodies has to stop. And I really hope this film fits into that conversation of making it stop. And since I know that in 2 years from now, we'll still have a world where people have a hard time saying the word clitoris and people still won't know what it looks like, it'll be relevant for a long time to come. And that's what I'm really hoping. And I guess finally what I hope, and I said I would be successful, is if there came a point in the future when every young woman entering her freshman year of high school knew what her clitoris looked like, what it was, and where it was, where it was and what it was for. And I think that would change the way young women fundamentally make decisions about when and how they will be sexual. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Sophia, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think I can top. I mean, I think it's great.
It's a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
That kind of overlapped with the second question, which you guys also sort of answered throughout as well, which is from Carmen. And it's speaking to what girls and those born with clitorises learn in school. And is there anything, and I guess like Maria sort of got into this a bit too, like that anything maybe specifically that you wish was being taught more at all, and then more overtly in school education in terms of this work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I would love, from as early as possible, girls and boys are taught about clitorises and penises, that they're related, that they are, they come from the same embryonic tissue, and they're unique in how they do their things, but they have a lot in common, and they're both equally important. They're both equally, if not, they're equally sensitive, or the clitoris is significantly more sensitive. There's a dispute about if it's 8,000 nerves versus 3,000 nerves in the clitoris versus the glands of the penis, the glands of the clitoris. But either way, just that they're both, those are the places, like if you want someone to have sexual experience, like those are the things that you engage, and getting out of this like penis vagina trope. I would start there, but I would also absolutely want to teach girls about their menstrual cycles and period tracking, so that they can know about their fertile window, so that they can know, like, you're probably going to feel the most sexual when you're ovulating. You're probably going to really want to have sex then. You're probably going to be the most fertile. That's the time to be the most careful. You can still have sexual experiences, but maybe don't risk any kind of thing that's going to get you pregnant. Just have sex in these other ways. I would also tell girls, you know, don't let anyone touch your vulva with dirty hands. Don't let anyone, you know, go down on you with a mouth that they just ate a bunch of food, because your pH is going to get thrown off and it's going to throw off everything. Everyone's so focused on STDs and pregnancy, but like just basic sexual experiences about how vulvas work. Girls need to know. Girls need to know. So I would really start there. And I would just say, you know, the purpose of sex is pleasure. The vast majority of times you have sex in your life, even if you reproduce, the majority is going to be about pleasure. The times you reproduce are going to be like 0.001% of the time. So you have a right to pleasure. You should have pleasure. If you're not having pleasure, you don't feel any obligation to stay.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer, and so many great details in there to think about further.
I'd love to add in a wee little thing.
Yeah, go.
As an educator, I haven't been in a health class in a long time, but what I know about the teaching of health is that sex education is about the mechanics, but it also is very focused on consent. And I feel like that's so misleading. Just in light of what Sophia just said, of course, you should consent to have sex if it's happening, but it completely sidesteps the agency of a woman who might be actually initiating sex, or the idea that you do have sex because you want to and because it's pleasurable. And I just think that is missing from education for sure.
Yeah, that kind of speaks actually to this next question that we have from Anna that says, how do you balance teaching girls about the power of their bodies, the goodness of their pleasure, to be confident, not to have shame, with keeping them safe in the context of rape culture? In the example of keep your legs crossed, which obviously is a massive question. Please fix the world now also. But your thoughts?
Well, I would start out by saying we should all try and imagine how our lives might have been different if, when we were 3 years old, we had been taught about our bodies in a way that didn't involve shame or disgust or embarrassment, but rather in a way that involved empowering us, right? Knowledge is a powerful thing. And so I think teaching everyone the truth about their bodies, but particularly, you know, girls, is a way to give them knowledge which enables them to make different choices. So I saw, when my daughter and her friends were in high school, the kind of spectrum of the way she and her friends lost their virginity. None of it was particularly empowering for any of them, okay? Because they didn't really have the knowledge that they need. And so if someone understands that the source of their pleasure resides within their own body and that they are entitled to that pleasure. That was something Sophia and I were sort of thinking about when we were thinking about the next film we were going to make, is how would the world change if we empowered young girls when they were 3 years old to be, you know, not to think about their bodies solely as something that somebody did something to, or that they were receptacles of. It could change the world. We need to change the world, not because girls are responsible, however they are responsible for rape. They're not. We need to educate our sons and if you don't view another human being as someone who has complete agency and entitlement to all of the things you do, then that's a lot easier for you to rape that person than it would be if you saw them as a complete human being, I think. And so rape comes out of not seeing other bodies as equal to your own, right? It comes out of a culture that is just says that, you know, people less powerful than you are there to be had by you if that's your choice. So I think it's a dangerous thing to connect, you know, keeping girls safe with giving them information. I think information keeps them safe. Knowledge keeps them safe. That doesn't mean the world is a safe place. It's not. But not telling them the truth is the surefire way of not keeping them safe.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I would add that there's so much emphasis from such a young age on appearance for anyone feminine. How you look is everything. How you accommodate people and make people feel, and how obedient and nice and deferent and smiley and appealing and appeasing you are is how you are rewarded and go through the world. So it's a complete setup to find oneself, unsurprisingly, in a sexual situation where teenage girls feel like their job is to give blowjobs and give orgasms, and if they don't have pain, they consider that a successful experience. So I would, in addition to what Maria said, I would really, encourage them to care about how they feel, to care about what's happening inside their body. The second they feel uncomfortable in a situation, to believe themselves, to know they have the right to get out. Who cares how this other person feels? If they don't feel safe, get out. I would tell them, I will believe you. If anything happens, you tell me, I have your back. And I would say with your friends, make sure that you can trust your friends. And if they're the type that are gonna like betray you or abandon you, or you're in a dangerous situation, they're gonna leave you, they're not your friend. I mean, I would really, because there's so many dangerous situations that are, I really worry about girls and young women. They're so harassed, the level of harassment. And it's not just like on the street, it's like uncles, it's like friends of their dad, it's just like everywhere. So I would be like, damn, this is rough out here. And you have a right to feel good, but also understand that like people are going to try to prey on you. I mean, I can tell the amount of times like me and my sister and all our friends would like, guys would be like jacking off on the subway or like on the bus, or harassing us in camp, harassing us at school, harassing us as we're trying to get home from school, harassing us as we're trying to like be with the babysitter. I mean, it was like, there was no end, So I think that like, damn, like we really, it is a war out there, to be honest. When it comes to protecting little girls, it is a war, because their bodies, I mean, statistically, we know that they are not safe, and they're taught to be silent. So,
there's a quote by a poet, and I'm going to forget her name, but it's a really powerful quote. And she wrote, God should have made girls lethal when he made monsters of men. And that's kind of the way I think. I mean, whatever it would take to make a girl understand that she has some power, that's what we have to do, because it's not safe for girls and women. It's not safe at all. Because somehow males, they just feel entitled to behave in ways that are,
yeah. But and then it makes me think that like pleasure is really in a way the antidote, because the person that cares about your pleasure, that's probably a person you can trust more. A person who doesn't care about your pleasure, wants you to be uncomfortable, is fine with you being uncomfortable, that's a dangerous person. And so just telling them from a young age, you have a right to feel good. Think about, oh, you don't know what feels good? Okay, well, like, that's important. Like, slow down, be in your own body, listen to your body, think about your body. How are you feeling in your body? Where do you feel safe? Like, these are questions that need to be asked, and there needs to be space for girls to find out what makes them feel comfortable and find a voice for that.
And I think Sophia brought up a really important point when she was talking about the way we raise girls. We're taught to please people. We're taught to be nice. We're taught not to raise our voice. We're taught not to say things that are, will make adults angry. And that, we're taught that so strongly that I've lost count of how many of those American gymnasts were sexually assaulted by that doctor. Some of them while their parents were in the room. And so why not, I mean, because they're told not to say to an adult, stop that, don't do that, because don't do what? You're being impolite. So I think we have to give our daughters the permission to be as rude as they want, and not to please anybody but please themselves. And that's why, you know, when Sophia mentioned earlier, you know, Audre Lorde, that's why that work is so important, because she says once you know the true capacity of your body, you won't settle for anything less. And so why are we not teaching young people that, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of the way we raise girls, we should just throw that out. That should just go away. You know, if you feel like speaking up, open your mouth and say it loud. That's what I, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Well,
think also there's, sorry, just one more thing though. I have to say that, I mean, I think that there is a normalization of pain, and that's taught to girls. Like, we're taught at a young age that sex is uncomfortable, sex feels bad in the beginning anyways. It might not feel as good for you as it will for him. Periods hurt, you know, all these things hurt. So when you have an experience that doesn't really feel good, you're like, well, I guess that's normal.
Mhm.
It's so denaturalized to feel good that people
Mhm.
expect that they don't have to, or they shouldn't, or they don't, you know, they think, oh, if the doctor is, you know, maybe hurting them or making them feel uncomfortable, well, that's lots of things make them feel uncomfortable and no one really has a problem with it. So how do they even know it's wrong? That's why we need to normalize pleasure. I mean, I can't say it. It's like a broken record, but really, that's why it's so radical.
And as you, I think, say, maybe not exactly literally, but the film shows us that pleasure is a form of resistance. It is radical, and it has to be until it is completely normal, right? Which I hope is someday soon. So it has been an hour. I have so enjoyed our conversation. Kimber, I think that there are no more questions and we should wrap it up.
Yeah, we are done with questions and heading towards the end here.
Thank you so much, Sophia and Maria, for joining us. What a lovely conversation. I'm so pleased to have spoken with you and to have seen this film, and I'm really looking forward to the one you're working on now.
Yes, please send it to us when it's ready, and we can carry on these conversations further. And yes, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to this amazing audience for tuning in. And if you have not watched it yet, of course, watch it. Tell everybody in town in Ontario to watch this film, because it is really important, and this conversation was fabulous. So thank you all for joining us. And we will end it there for tonight. Excellent and amazing kickoff for the festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye.